I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a marble yogurt cake, and this is what it looks like. This cake is wonderfully moist, and what I really like about it is we get to enjoy both the chocolate and a vanilla cake all in one. It's really good just plain. You could dust the top with some powdered sugar or even unsweetened cocoa powder, but today we're going to dress it up with a smooth and creamy ganache. And then I've also decorated the outside of the cake with some toasted pecans. So, a really good cake. So, first thing we need to do is to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. You will need a 8-inch round, that's 20 centimeters. This pan has 2-inch sides, which is 5 centimeters, because our cake is going to rise quite a bit. And you could butter the inside of your cake pan, but I'm taking the easy way today, and I'm just going to spray it with one of these non-stick sprays. And then I also like to put just a round of parchment at the bottom of the pan. So what I like to do is I put it down, just get a little bit of the spray or butter, and then flip it over and put it in. That way, I find, you know, sometimes the paper can stick to the bottom of the pan. That kind of prevents it from happening. So, there we go. The first thing, we are only making one batter, and then we kind of divide it and add some melted chocolate to one part. And that's how you get the vanilla and the chocolate. So the first thing we have to do is melt some chocolate. You will need a saucepan of simmering water, and then in a heat-proof bowl, I usually use stainless steel, you will need 3 ounces, which is 85 grams. Now you can use, depending on like how sharp you want your chocolate flavor, you could use either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. I'm actually using today a semi-sweet, which is about a 58% cocoa content. If you want to use like a bittersweet at 70, usually around 70%. Now you can just get your chocolate on the baking aisle. What's great now, even on the baking aisle, or you could buy a chocolate bar, is they normally say, you'll see a chocolate bar and says 58% cocoa or 58% on it or 70%. So you know right away how much, whether it's a semi-sweet or a bittersweet. I'm using these round discs. If you use a chocolate bar, just cut it up. And to that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon, 10 grams. I'm using coffee. Good thing, coffee seems, even just a little, like a tablespoon, seems to really enhance the chocolate flavor of whatever you're baking. If you don't have any coffee, I just happen to have some brewed coffee left over. If you don't, just use water, 1 tablespoon, 10 grams of water. So what we're going to do is just put this over our saucepan of simmering water and just let it melt. Okay, chocolate is melted. As this melts, make sure you stir it a little so that the coffee mixes with the chocolate as it's melting. So there we have it. So now I'm just going to let this cool down. It's just a touch warm. And I'll set up, and when we come back, we will make our batter. So to make our batter, what I love about yogurt cakes, they're dump and stir. We don't need our mixer, just really the dry ingredients 1 bowl, the wet in another, mix them together, we're done. So for the dry ingredients, I have 1.5 cups, which is 195 grams of all-purpose flour, plain flour. To that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram. I'm using a fine kosher salt. You could use table salt. And just with the whisk, you could use a fork, use your hand. Just whisk that. That's our dry. And for our wet, I'll put that over there for a sec. You will need, in a bowl, 3 large eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature, and 3 large eggs out of the shell is 150 grams. So just give that a whisk. If you absolutely want to use your hand mixer or stand mixer, you could. So next, yogurt. You will need 1 cup, 240 milliliters, 240 grams. I'm using a plain yogurt. Actually, I'm using a plain, what's called a Greek style. You can just use a regular yogurt. I do recommend using the full fat. That'll give us a real nice flavor to our cake. You could use a reduced fat. You want your yogurt at room temperature, so will have to leave it out. If you're using the reduced fat, you'll get some water, so just drain that off. I do not recommend using fat-free. You can do that for your breakfast and that, but not for a cake. I don't recommend that. So just put that in. And for flavoring, I am adding 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of pure vanilla extract. If you don't want the vanilla flavor, just leave that out. Just going to whisk that in. And we need some more fat. So 1/2 cup, 120 milliliters, 120 grams. I'm using a flavorless oil, which means corn, vegetable, canola, safflower. You could even use a light olive oil. The thing about oil, when you use it in cakes, it makes the cake really moist and soft. And two, if you want to refrigerate your cake, if you use oil, your cake won't get like hard like if you use butter. But I know the question's coming. Yes, you can use butter. You would use 1/2 cup, 113 grams of melted butter that's cooled down to room temperature. But the texture will be a little different. Won't be quite as soft. I've tried both, and I like both, so. But I like the softness of oil. That's why I'm using that. And then you will need 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar. I've been using lately, an organic cane sugar, which, it's like granulated white, but it's organic. And just whisk that in. Okay, so now we're just going to mix these two together. As you can see, really simple. I've done quite a few different yogurt cakes if you've been following. And what I like is they're so easy to make. So if you want to go either to our YouTube channel or the joybaking.com website, I have like just a plain yogurt cake. Let me see. I think I have like just chocolate. I think I have an apple and maybe, do I have a blueberry streusel? Don't hold me to that, but I have quite a few. I can't remember. If you like this one and you want to try others, go have a look. So that's our batter. I'm just using the whisk. You could just use your spatula to mix them together. So that is essentially our cake batter. Now this is the part where people go, how do you get 2 cakes? What we're going to do is we are going to take some of the batter and then add the chocolate to that. Now, I use a scale for this. I know some people, you can eyeball a little less than half the batter. And we're going to add the chocolate to that. I'm not very good at eyeballing, and I like my scale. You can be so precise, which I like. So make sure you zero your scale and take out 400 grams. I don't know, people say scales are a pain. I don't think they are. I think it makes my life so much easier. I don't have to guess. Like, is that half the batter? But each to their own. Okay, that's about right. So that's going to be the white, and put that there. And I'm just going to add my chocolate into that. I'll keep that. Use this, won't matter. Just make sure you really whisk it in so that all the white becomes chocolate. Now there's different ways. Some people like to scoop like little blobs of white and chocolate, white chocolate. The problem is this, especially the white batter is quite thin, and I've tried that and it just doesn't work. So how I'm going to do it is just pour all my white. And to tell you the truth, I find this a little easier than the putting a little mound of each. And this is about being simple, easy. And I'll just use my spatula to level that as best as I can. You just use the back of a spoon, it's fine. And then we will take that out. Let's give that a quick stir to make sure it's all mixed together. And then I'm just pouring the chocolate right over top of the white. And then, well, then the magic part comes, where we marble it. And you know, the thing is, everybody's cake, the marble look will look different depending on how much you marble it. But you will get, and I find even within the same, you know, the same cake, when I slice it, some slices will have a little more chocolate, some will have a little more white. At least I find that happens with me. So now, I'll use this one. Again, just okay, so once you get like that. So now, you can take a knife, you can use a wooden skewer, just using a spatula here. The marbling, I'll just show you. I mean, there's all, some people do round. I kind of go, I count actually. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I turn my pan and kind of go around and go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all I do. Now you could do it a little more if you want more. Whoop. More swirls. Like I said, some people go around, whatever works for you. What I do, a lot of times I forget, once you do this, because we've kind of got in there and mixed up the batter, just bang it a few times. Hopefully we'll get rid of those air pockets. So baking, I find, I'm going to say 45, but you know, depending on your oven, it could be 40, it could be 50. I'll take the middle range. Mine's usually around 44, 45 minutes, but you know, depends on your oven. Some ovens run a little hot. So I would check it at least at the 40-minute mark. And it will rise quite a bit. You will have some cracking on top. That's perfectly normal, don't panic. And a toothpick inserted into the center will come out clean. You know, I will say, because a lot of people say, well, my cake is dry. What's wrong with this recipe? It's not the recipe, it's your oven probably. It's your oven. And, you know, ovens can run hot. They can run cool. You know, you can get an oven thermometer to get it bang on, but, you know, that's what happens. So that's why, especially with cakes, test them before and with your toothpick, because the toothpick will tell you if it's underbaked, if you have batter, but it can come out clean, and that can also mean it's overbaked. So that's why you got to test it like early to make sure you get it right when it's fully baked. So that's my little spiel on that. So I'm going to say 40 to 50 minutes. And rotate your pan about halfway through baking, front to back, because usually you have some hot spots. Our marble cake is done. So put your pan on a wire rack. See, it's risen. A toothpick insert into the center, comes out clean. There is some cracking, don't worry. And it's just starting to pull away from the sides of the pan. That's another indication that it's fully baked. So now we're gonna let it cool 10 to 15 minutes in the pan on a wire rack. So when we come back, we will take it out of the pan. So to take the cake out of the pan, first, I'm using an offset spatula. You can just use a knife. Run it around the inside of the pan just to make sure it's not sticking. And then, my pan's still a little hot. Take another rack, wire rack, put it. If you didn't have another wire rack, you just take a plate and flip it. There we go. See, because we did grease the, we flipped over the paper once we greased it, didn't stick to my pan, my cake I mean, which is good. And then I'm gonna flip it back over so it's right side up, like so. I'll move that to the side. Now we're gonna let that cool right down to room temperature before we cover it with our ganache. You do not have to cover it with ganache. It's really good as it is. Once it cools down, before serving, you could dust the top with some powdered sugar or even unsweetened cocoa powder if you want to do that. But today, we'll frost it. It's always more chocolate. Who doesn't like that? I'm using a chocolate ganache, which is just a mixture of chocolate and cream. I like that because we're not adding any more sugar. You know, if you use like a typical confectioner frosting, which is really just butter and powdered sugar, and then you could add some chocolate to it, that adds more sugar to our cake, and I just find it a little too sweet. Where a ganache, it's really just more chocolate, which I love. So what you will need is 4 ounces, which is 115 grams. Again, you can use either a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. And I finely chopped that. And then you will need, I've already got it in a small saucepan, 1/3 of a cup, which is 80 milliliters, 80 grams of a heavy whipping cream. That's a cream with a 35 to 40% butterfat content. And yes, you do need heavy cream because it'll set up our ganache, so it'll get nice and firm. That's why we're using such a high fat cream. And what I like to do is also add 1 tablespoon, 13 grams of butter. You could use salted or unsalted, just put in little pieces. That's gonna kind of smooth out our ganache. And I'm doing this in a small saucepan on the stove. I'm just gonna heat this until it just starts to bubble and it's about to foam up. You want to get it really hot so that it will melt our chocolate. You could do this in the microwave as well. Just, you know, watch it carefully. You don't want it boiling over. Okay, it's got the bubbles around the outside. It's about to foam up. Get that off the burner. It just takes a few, like even a minute or so, because there's not a lot of cream there. So what I'm doing is just pouring that over our chocolate. And then I just kind of swirl it to get the chocolate all under the cream. Just going to leave that a second. And then all we're going to do, I'm using, you could just use a spoon, but I'm using a whisk. Just start in the center. Stir it, and then bigger circles until it's all mixed together. And then what we're going to do, the reason I make it now is this is really hot. So we got to let this cool down, and I'm going to let this thicken up until it's spreadable. Okay. And that's it. So what I'm going to do is just let this sit at room temperature just until it sets up, till we can spread it on the cake. But we'll let that thicken up, we'll let that cool down, and then we come back, we'll put it on top of our cake. So we're now ready to frost our cake. So you need a serving platter. I'm just using a large metal spatula. So, and then we have our ganache. I'm just gonna whisk it. The thing about ganache when you make it, first make it, it's hot, so you have to let it cool down. The longer, if you don't just let it cool down a little, it'll be very like pourable, so you could just actually pour it over your cake. I let it set up a little longer and be a little thicker. You can actually refrigerate it, get it quite firm, and then like beat it a bit, and then it's really soft and quite spreadable. This is kind of in between those two, between quite pourable and the real spreadable. That makes sense. Okay, and then let's take that spatula. Now you can do the top and the sides. I'm just going to mainly do the top. It's really up to you. Isn't it? I like how shiny it is. Oh, and it tastes wonderful. I do find whenever you're making a ganache, if you eat it right away, depending on the type of chocolate you used, it can be quite sharp. I really like to let it sit a while, and then the flavor does soften. So there we have that. It's still really good now. I could just eat it like that. I mean, the cake looks really good just like that. You could put some chocolate sprinkles on there, or just even candy sprinkles. I'm using some toasted chopped pecans today. You could use walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds. I do like to toast them because that really brings out their flavor. So what I do, after I bake the cake, I just leave the oven on and put some pecans or whatever type of nut you want to use on a baking sheet, put it in the oven, 6 to 8 minutes, just until you start to smell the nuts. Whatever type you're using, you start to smell them. That's when you know they're done enough. And then take them out of the oven, let them cool, and then coarsely chop. And then I don't know why, I just like to put the nuts around the edge of the cake. You could do the whole top, but just like so. Pecans and chocolate, oh, wonderful. And then that's it. I am going to let the ganache set up a little before we cut it. So that's what I'm going to do. And then when we come back, we will try a slice. So let's cut a slice. Sharp knife. And then I usually like to just take a paper towel or cloth and just wipe my knife in between cuts. Gets a neater cut. Oh, doesn't that look nice? See, you get the chocolate and the vanilla, which is just perfect, like I said, for those times when you can't decide whether you want a vanilla or a chocolate cake, make this. It's soft, it's moist, good vanilla flavor, and then the chocolate, like a nice, I mean, it's not overly strong chocolate flavor, but really nice with using that melted, like I said, either semi-sweet or bittersweet, depending on what you prefer. I think the ganache adds to the whole cake experience. It's creamy, it's smooth, it's got nice chocolate flavor, and then a little bit of the toasted pecans just adds a little bit of crunch and a little more flavor. You can cover and store this cake 2-3 days, either at room temperature or if you prefer in the refrigerator. But if you put it in the refrigerator, I like to bring it to room temperature for eating, or you can even freeze it. So try this one. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.